Good morning. So I am still playing catch up a little bit out in the garden. The weather's been really odd this year, and I know a lot of people have been having a really tough time, including myself, on some things getting stunted, it's going really, really slow. Some things are doing absolutely fine, and I've heard a few people having issues with diseases or fungals or different things that are going on in the gardens. Where we are in north central Mass, we have gone from a really, really, really dry spring. All of May, I think we only had maybe like half an inch or something of rain, to a very hot, and then cold, and then hot, and then now wet season. So it has not been easy to adjust. So as we go through this, there's a few things that I can hopefully help you on, tips that I do, and things that might help you. So things like blossom end rot are going to be on the menu for these early tomatoes. So whether we like it or not, irregular watering is part of the cause. And so if it's raining every day, like it has been, these tomato plants are now used to everyday rain. And the problem with that is that when we go back to some dry weather here, most likely it's coming, and you have to make sure that you are adjusting your watering to allow for what the tomato plants are used to, not what you normally would water. So that's definitely something to think about. You can see how these funky flowers coming in. This is like a triple. These you can pick these off, or you can let them go. It's usually the first early ones on a lot of the plants. We'll have doubles and triples and some quads even. That's pretty typical every year. But if you are worried about blossom end rot with all of the water that you've had in your tomato plants are, this size or smaller and blooming, you may decide to pick off those blossoms right now. And that's not a bad thing. Yes, it may delay your fruit production a little bit, but your plant's going to be stronger and healthier by the time the fruit comes. The other thing is pruning. So you guys who have watched my channel for a little while know that this is not my normal state of my tomatoes. These things are monsters. There's suckers everywhere. This is what a sucker is. It's when you have the main stem of the tomato and then you have an offshoot come at a 45. And that becomes another main line of your tomato if you let it. So my typical state of tomatoes look more like these two, which I just pruned. And so you have a single stem coming up, prune everything up into like the, I don't know, maybe for now I'll prune up to like 3 leaves or so below the first buds. And but I will actually continue to prune these because I need to hang them on my lower and lean strings. So for these, I have a bunch of videos on them. I'll try to put the links below. But these strings come down, and then I have clips that I clip these plants to. As these tomatoes grow up to the top of the trellis, what I'll do is I'll actually pull this one, lower the string down, and then move it to its next spot. And so each plant will continue to actually lay the vine, and I grow these more like a vine than a bush. Indeterminate is the ones you want to do this with, not determinate. And so as they lay down, they'll actually continue to root along here. And so it almost makes a big, I think my mom always said a wreath. Is the way she described it when she came and saw. So you kind of, winding these vines up and around. By doing more pruning, even if you're going to grow your tomatoes as a bush style, I would highly recommend pruning at least to this state. So your bottom foot to 18 inches, it has a lot of airflow. When we are in this very wet environment, you've got splatter coming up. I do have straw down, which helps with some of the splatter, but you're still going to have things bounce back up under the leaves, and that's a lot of times how you'll get some of the fungals. You won't have good airflow, you'll get fungals, so and diseases. So a lot of that is all tied in together. Some of these, because they got hit with frost and things like that, they've come back really strong, and part of that was due to foliar feeds. So doing a that's like spraying the leaves, if you're not familiar with foliar feed, doing that foliar feed really has helped these recover. And you can't really even tell, actually you probably can tell, the ones that are a little bit skinnier, those are the ones that I planted in the place of the other tomatoes. The ones that were actually rooted in, even if they got a little damage, they have taken off because their roots were solid. But doing some foliar feed on these, especially this type of year where the weather's all over the place, the plants don't really know what to do, can really help with concentrating some growth and making sure that they're getting the nutrients they need to be strong, healthy plants. And so I always recommend this time of year a fish and seaweed fertilizer. I prefer using organics. So you can use Neptune's Harvest as an example of one of those. I've also been experimenting with adding a few more organic type materials into my foliar feed. So you can mix multiple things into a foliar all at once. And so I've been doing Micro 5000 and a liquid humates when I'm doing a really early morning feed. That will help with the uptake of the nutrients. So the other thing is that by pruning them, you'll also be able to weed a lot better. So as I go through the gardens this morning, I just thought I would share some of the tips and tricks that I've been doing to keep our plants healthy and to get them to make sure that I have airflow and less disease. So a couple things I didn't mention was make sure you are using clean pruners and that you clean them after. Even if you're moving from this bed to like that bed, it's important to wash and clean them between. Rubbing alcohol works pretty good, and then a little water after. That will help with not carrying one disease from one bed to another. Also, you can make sure that you are looking at leaves. So as you are pruning, you can see, is there any caterpillar poop, for example, or aphids or stuff like that? So because you're really in there looking at the plants, and you can really use that time to examine what's going on with your plants. How are they doing? You can see these are really healthy, sturdy plants. I'm pretty happy with them. Having them in raised beds does help with all the wet, but when it's dry, I have to make sure that I'm using this drip tape irrigation really well. It's just adjusting, putting your hand into the soil, checking out what's going on the surface of the soil. Are there bugs? Bugs are a good thing. There's a lot of beneficial bugs and healthy bugs that help keep your soil happy and healthy. There's some, predator bugs that are really good for you as well. And yes, there's some not so good bugs, but for the most part, ants are not an issue. I know I see a lot of people post about ants. So things like that, I would say, if you're seeing a ton of ants, check your plants for aphids because they farm them. But for the most part, it should be fine. So I finished this first row. I really need to get into the hoop house one, and I'm going to show you why. Because I already have fruit here and on multiple stems. So what will happen is I'll allow some of these plants to have 2 full stems in the hoop house, but these guys are looking wicked healthy in here, but definitely want to make sure that I clean these up and get them strung up this week. The peppers that are in the grow bags here have done really well. But the peppers that are over in the beds, I'll show you in a minute, they need some pruning and some care here. So as we go through, you'll see certain things are doing really well, like the alyssum has pretty much taken over this bed. That's not a problem. This is a cut flower bed. The cosmos and giant marigolds and things like that will grow right up through. So the stock over here is doing really well. The stock in my in-ground bed, not as well. So it is definitely really interesting to see what's doing well. This is some later stock. Most of this is vintage brown. Actually, I'm really in love with that color. Onions, they are heavy feeders, so lots of water, lots of sun. Between those two, they're actually pretty happy. And I come over here, lettuce has taken off this month. So my companion planting of lettuce inside my onions here and kale is doing very, very well. Carrots, they're actually doing pretty good. So I will have carrots here in probably about 2 weeks maybe. I did taste one last night, of course. Spinach, it's been my 4th cut of spinach that I need to do. You can see I cut this little corner here, but I am going to harvest probably another 10 pounds out of this bed of spinach in mid-June, which I am really happy about. Some years you can't grow spinach past, the 20th of May, so you never know. So here, the peppers, you can see they're pointing upward leaves. I pruned some of these the other day, so they're looking a little bit better, but they definitely need some help. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking off some of these giant solar panels that are a little ratty. We had some really high winds come through. They got really mad about it. We also had some more cooler nights, which peppers don't love. And so I'm also going to come through, and these smaller ones, I need to pick off all these buds and make sure I'm continuing to prune the stems so that they can get to be this height before I'm letting them actually go to flower. So this half of the bed, I am at the point where I am letting them go to flower, but they are kind of stunted due to the weather. And so I'll continue to prune off the big leaves, the ones that are showing some damage, trying to get them healthier. I'll also be doing a foliar feed probably tomorrow morning on these, and I'll be putting down the granular all-purpose around here and start them on their every other week feed schedule for that. But you can definitely see these do not look as healthy as my tomatoes right now.